Hi, I'm Gwen Foster. I want to talk about German New Medicine and how it relates to emotions and our health. I have been following the work of Dr. Hammer in German New Medicine for, I guess, since 2000, for 19 years. I was first introduced to his work through taking classes in hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. And at that time, about 20 years ago, there was a basic, well, I wouldn't say basic, there was a great chart about every emotion and every type of cancer. So at that time, 20 years ago, it was in a hypnotist guild, I actually think, is where I first saw this first information. And it showed like the pancreas, and it showed the lung cancer and the liver cancer and the skin melanoma and all these different types of cancer. And at that time, I actually didn't know at all that cancer was related to emotions. But as time went on, in the early days of using technology, I had a SKIO or QXCI in the very beginning, and German New Medicine was actually on there. And I always just kind of observed it. You know, I wasn't using it, I hadn't been officially trained in it, but I always observed it. And what I thought was interesting was the information I got did always match the client's story. And so I could see that relativity, and it was just like an observation. And then as time went on, I decided to take the German New Medicine courses from Ilse Dora in Canada, who is very awesome. Her website is newmedicine.ca if you want to find out way more detail than this video. And I took all the classes, and I really knew a lot already by then. Like, I knew the basics. What I didn't know was that over the next, 20 years, since the year 2000, the Dr. Hammer had mapped out basically every medical condition. And, whether it's MS or digestive issues or colitis or IBS or eczema or, anything. And so I was unaware of that. And that was pretty eye-opening. But it really got into understanding how humans are mammals and how all mammals have a certain response to conflict, and also how we have a certain response to the resolution of the conflict. And so, without going into great detail, because I want to do some separate videos on specific conditions, I just want to explain it like this, is that when a mammal, including humans, are in fight or flight, actually little goes wrong in the body as far as medical conditions go. There's like that adrenaline's going, maybe not sleeping. Things go wrong. Like when you're in fight or flight, your body is like thinking it's in danger. It's like running from a wild animal. And so your busy brain, not sleeping, Hammer says that not sleeping is giving you more hours of the day to resolve your issues. Digestive issues, your digestion is really too fast because it's trying to eat quickly, digest quickly, and get it out of your system. And if you think about it, if you were running for your life from a wild animal, you would be not eating, not pooping, not thinking logically or rationally. You would be doing everything in a different speed. And so you're not saying, hey, Tiger, let me stop and get a good 8-hour sleep and let's resume this tomorrow. Or, hey, Tiger, I need to do my taxes and I need to be thinking clearly. That doesn't happen. So a lot of times there are actually things that go wrong, but when the bottom really falls out is in the resolution of a conflict. And so I want to give you some examples, and I'll tell you that if you look at your own life and you create a timeline of significant health issues, that more likely they happened when something was just resolved. So when someone has, like, for instance, worked their whole life, had a super stressful job, that they usually have something go wrong, like when they go on vacation or they actually retire. There's like a large number of people that you probably know somebody that retired after working somewhere 30 years and they had a heart attack, a stroke, a cancer, or something like that. Or you hear about someone that went through a terrible divorce, they're single, and then they're getting remarried, and then there's boom, the bottom falls out. Some other health condition happens because of the new relationship. That's also a resolution. I know someone, this happened very recently. He went through kind of an off and on relationship, and and it was very emotional, very significant. And then it was finally over, and then he meets another woman, and the week before he's supposed to get remarried, he has a stroke and he dies. And this is unfortunate, but this is what happens in Dr. Hammer's theories and his work. And I see it over and over and over that, you know, even like with pancreas and some of the famous, you know, like one of the most famous stories is Stephen Jobs with Apple. And if you ever watched any of the movies about his life, you know, he was pretty much screwed over. You know, he was basically had his company stolen from him, but he was a smart guy. And he had the stock options and the stock money that he was able to buy his company back. And as soon as he did that and got that resolved and had the company back, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer is a disgust conflict. It's dealing with something disgusting. And I would say what they did to him was pretty disgusting, the people that took his company from him. So even in movies that are true stories, and you hear about someone that had a heart attack or someone who had cancer or someone who went into kidney failure, there's always a story behind that, you know. And if I can get enough of the story, it always matches German New Medicine. And I think that there's a lot to know about German New Medicine. I think it's not barely known in the United States. It's way more common in Latin American countries, including Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Cuba. I did hear a story that Fidel Castro was dealing or working with a German New Medicine practitioner. And, you know, if you remember, he was sick for a long time, and then he kind of wasn't sick, and then he died of something else. But they expected him to die many years before he actually passed. And what I had heard was that he had worked with a German New Medicine practitioner, and that they had required all the medical staff and people in Cuba to go back to school to learn German New Medicine. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to die with a resolution. Sometimes there's way less significant things that happen. And I'll give you another example. Both my daughters, and I'm going to also compare this to at least one client I know, both of my daughters, every time that they would be away from their boyfriends, and then the day they would be, like if we went on vacation, and then the day they would be reunited, they would get a herpes outbreak, like, you know, fever blisters. And it happened every time. And at first I was like, okay, well, it's because they had the separation conflict. Because when there's some level of emotional, and I'm not going to say codependence, but the strong missing of somebody, and then there's this reuniting of that person, then you can think of a skin issue. You know, some kind of separation conflict relates to the skin. And I have another client that's in a situation, you know, back and forth, and then, you know, there's herpes, there's shingles, there's all these skin issues that seem like maybe sexually transmitted, maybe random, but it's about our relationships with other people. Many times the female cancers, the male cancers, are about our relationships with our spouse, our partner, our loved ones, our kids. You know, so if someone has a child maybe they haven't spoken to in 7 or 8 years, and then them and that child are reunited, you could think of like a female type cancer might happen because of the resolution of the conflict. So there's a whole lot to know about German New Medicine, and I think it's really super fascinating because one of the key philosophies is the timeline is within 1 year. So if someone's in fight or flight for many years because, you know, they're raising kids and working 3 jobs to make, you know, the ends meet and all that, you can always look at the resolution though and look at that 1 year time frame. In case of skin issues, it's super easy to figure that out. And some of the cancers though, like lung cancer or pancreatic cancer, you can still have that year look back of when that person really just was like, finally I'm getting remarried, finally I'm retiring, finally I get my company back, finally I get to see my boyfriend today, finally, you know, whatever. But it could be the back and forth, which he calls a hanging healing, but that's when the symptoms come and go, like the digestive symptoms. Digestion basically is something that eats at you. And I think it's easy to say we could all have something that eats at us, but the more we let it eat at us, the more we're going to have digestive issues, whether it's just gas and bloating or stomach cancer or intestinal cancer or something even more serious. So also the location of the cancer or problem is also determined by your perception of the event. And I like to explain this way. If you had a husband that was cheating on you, and they cheated on you with your best friend, that's a different situation than a husband that's cheating on you that you wanted to leave anyway, or you were actually ready to leave, packing your bags, and you find out they were cheating. Those are two totally different kind of situations. Or it's different if they were cheating on you in your house, in your bed, and you walk in on them, versus hearing it from someone else or suspecting it but never proving it. So it can be very personal. It can be not such a big deal. It can be like, oh, I was going to do that anyway. Leave anyway, so great. He just made it easy for me. And in the case of things that are conflicts, but they're planned, like you plan to do something, those are not what Hammer believes are conflicts. So what he's talking about is a significant, unexpected, unplanned event. If you're planning on leaving your spouse for like 3 years and you finally do it, that's not necessarily the problem. The problem could be, though, in the next relationship, because it's in that resolution of whatever was wrong in the last relationship. So there is a lot to it. There's a lot of study. There's actually some great practitioners doing German medicine and some great YouTube videos on other channels about specific conditions, and I would definitely look those up. I'm going to do some on specific conditions myself, and especially the ones I've worked with a lot that have had pretty good success. Sometimes when the mind, this is a new concept for many people, but sometimes when the mind can just wrap their head around that, not that they've created it, like there's blame, they created this medical condition, but once they realize that the body is just doing what it should be doing, it kind of changes the whole thing. So I'll give you an example. Like in varicose veins is a way for someone to be stronger and stand up for themselves. Or maybe they were weak and not standing up to their spouse, or standing up to their boss, or standing up to their parents, or they didn't ever say what they wanted to say. This is a big thing with thyroid too. Then varicose veins is like a person who couldn't stand up for themselves, like couldn't defend themselves, like in an abuse case, or couldn't talk back, so that could be thyroid and varicose veins. But in another example with hormones, it's very common for there to be hormone challenges because of emotional issues. And I'll give you an example. In the wild, there's only one alpha, like in a herd of elk or a herd of deer, or in a dog pack, there's one alpha. And basically, this is kind of misunderstood, I think, but there's one alpha, which is a male. That doesn't mean there's only one male in the pack. It just means that the other males have become gay, basically. Their testosterone took a dive on purpose to survive this alpha male. Because if it didn't, these male, let's say wild dogs, would just be fighting all the time. So once the alpha is established, the other hormones go recessed as a survival mechanism. Well, this happens in human culture too. We can have an overbearing mother or father and our hormones take a dive. We can have an overbearing partner. We can have a boss situation. I had a funny thing happen. I was doing a talk at a place in Houston, and there was this woman who was just awful. She was like very overbearing. She definitely controlled the whole space. She was just a person renting the space. There were two older men that ran the place, and they would not confront her. They would not deal with her. They asked me to do it. And the woman was like, I don't want to smell y'all's food. You talk too loud. She was like trying to boss me around, and I had paid $600 to rent the space. And so I was like, sorry, so what will happen is over time, one alpha will always be established in a family unit, in a work environment, in a friendship, and in a partnership. But the person who doesn't become alpha, their hormones do something different and strange to compensate for the relationship. So, I was only renting the space for the weekend to do a workshop, but had I stayed there, one of us would have to concede or one of us would leave. That's just what happens. So you have that in every environment that you can think of. So even hormones, even low testosterone or low progesterone or low estrogen are ways of coping. They're coping strategies. And it's really about how we deal with other people, how we stand up for ourselves, and it's a lot about how we think and how we perceive ourselves. So all of that's super important. I just wanted to kind of give you an introduction. When I work with clients, I do look at the German New Medicine aspect of things because I really want to know what's going on in the psyche. Because sometimes it's not nutrition or pills or herbs or things that someone needs. Sometimes they need to be shook up a little bit, or sometimes they just need to see the pattern that has been created in their life to make real change. And that doesn't take a pill, that doesn't take a nutritional product. So thanks for watching. There'll be more videos on emotions and German New Medicine. Thanks, like and subscribe.